The main thing is that if we can open our hearts so that we can hear divinity from everyone, divinity will speak to us from everyone.
So welcome everyone to today's Gems from the Wisdom Traditions conversation circle that is offered by Still and Moving Center. And today we are following up the topic of the willing teacher. And we have a willing teacher here who's Ramdas Lamb. He's addressing it from the tradition of monastic Hinduism, having spent nearly a decade in India as a sadhu, studying under a spiritual teacher, and is a religious studies professor at UH. So we are so happy to have him speaking from great personal experience along these lines. So I hand it over to you, Ramdas Lamb. Thank you, Ramdas.
Thank you, Renee, and thank you, everyone, for being here with us. So the Hindu tradition has a real interesting approach to the concept of a teacher, and it's something that it's a difficult concept for Westerners to, I think, understand and adopt. But it starts out with the first guru, and let's understand what the word guru means. Guru means the destroyer of light, the destroyer of darkness with light. In other words, that person who brings light in place of darkness. And so that is a real important concept to understand. It's not a data giver. A data giver, like a school teacher, is someone who supplies data and teaches us about the things of the world. That's not what the word guru means, though that word has now become used in the latter sense. But they say in India, the first guru is mother. And that's really important to understand, because the mother is the first person who informs us about the world and ourselves. So one's mother brings us into the world and then teaches us about the world that we are in. And so she is a guru, but a teacher about the world, but it is believed that the mother not only teaches us about the world, but keeps us connected with her, and therefore with spirituality and creative energies and creative forces, etc. And obviously, as an infant, clearly we're connected that way. And so that's the first group. And then we have adhyapaks, and those are the teachers, and academic teachers can be referred to that way. And they teach us about the things about the world. But at some point, hopefully, we get into the realm of the spiritual, and then there are basically two types of spiritual teachers. There is a diksha teacher and a siksha teacher. And a diksha means one who gives initiation, one who brings us into a lineage. And this can be as a householder, or this can be as a monk or a nun. So we can either be a householder or a renunciant. And so the Diksha Guru brings us into a lineage of teachings that help us to approach an understanding of the world in which we live in, but more important, an understanding of ourselves. And so the Diksha teacher teaches us methods that we are to use to go within. In my lineage and in a lot of monastic lineages, we don't have the belief that, oh, your guru gives you enlightenment. We don't. I don't adhere to that. The Guru inspires you. The Guru teaches us. We have to do the work. We go within. But of course, there is obviously the blessings of the Guru in that there's guidance and compassion and wonderful teachings and inspiration. But we have to do the work, right? And so the Guru sets us on a path, inspires us on the path, informs us about obstacles on the path. But we have to proceed, we have to do the work. And that work is called sadhana. And so the sadhu is the renunciant who does sadhana, and the root for both of those, sad, is truth. Sat or sad is truth. And so a sadhu is someone who is seeking truth, on the path to truth. Sadhana is the practice, refers to the practices that we do in order to gain and to learn truth. Okay, so we have the sadhu and we have the sadhana and we have the diksha guru. Now, along the way, there will be other things that we might that our diksha guru might think that would be helpful for us in our path. And so the Diksha Guru will suggest, or we might go to the Diksha Guru and say, I want to learn about this. And the Diksha Guru may say, oh, go see this person. And so those are called Upagurus or Siksha Gurus. They teach us things. So I had maybe 6 Siksha Gurus during the time that I was in India. 2 of them taught me about herbs. And they would teach me about the use of herbs, the making of medicines. But of course, that goes back to the picking of the herbs. But if you're going to pick the herbs, you have to pick the herbs during the right astrological configuration. And so therefore, in order to learn how to make medicines, you have to learn how to pick herbs correctly. In order to learn how to pick herbs correctly, you have to learn something about astrology in order to be able to understand when the time to pick the herbs, etc. So, and to understand all those things is you have to go within and try to experience these things, because the issue of experience is central to spirituality. I think in all traditions, but in Hindu tradition, it's very emphasized. It's not data, once again, it's not learning things. Siksha gurus can tell us things, but the real goal is to have an inner experience. And once one has the inner experiences, then understanding the things that are on the outside become much easier, because we understand them from a clearer lens. So the belief is that there is consciousness, and consciousness is what our reality is. And then there's the temporal things like the body and the mind and the emotions and all of that stuff, and the karma, and that's all temporal things. But the eternal is the consciousness, and we call it Atma, or soul. And so the goal of the teacher is to bring us to that point where we can begin to allow the consciousness to be awakened, because the consciousness is within us, but our ego tends to block it from manifesting. And so we have to learn how to let go of the things that empower the ego, so that the consciousness can be awakened, so that we can begin to see things from a point of clarity. And so this is the job of the Diksha Guru. It's not an easy job. And it's not just, okay, here's the teaching, go do them. Because if you take responsibility as a Diksha Guru, and I have to say that I know many great teachers who are not Diksha Gurus. They're not interested in taking on disciples. They will be a Siksha Guru, they will teach a few things, but they won't take them on as disciples. And the reason for that is that relationship between Guru and Chela. Chela meaning disciple. Guru and Chela is within the Hindu tradition, and especially within the monastic traditions, is considered deeply, it is profound, and it is eternal. Once a teacher adopts a disciple, it is believed that it is the duty of that teacher to stay with that disciple, to continue to teach that disciple and inspire that disciple, however many lifetimes it takes, until they can reach the point of clarity. And what we might call liberation, but within my tradition, it doesn't mean you won't be born again. It means you no longer have to be born in order to work out your own karma. So now when you come back to birth, you come back to help others. And you may come back as a teacher. And you probably will come back as a teacher of some sort, either a diksha or a siksha guru. Right? And so the idea of that relationship between the teacher and the disciple, the profundity of that relationship, is something that I think a lot of Westerners have a very hard time understanding, because it's a commitment on both sides. It's like a marriage. And you go into it understanding that this is a forever kind of relationship. And so they say that it's very important. Don't look for a guru. Look for yourself, ready yourself, and when you are ready, this is a very common statement within the Hindu tradition, when the disciple is ready, the guru will appear. In other words, the person who is to teach me will become known to me. At some point, I will, if I have prepared myself, and if I'm preparing myself, I will meet the person who will then bring me into a lineage that through which I can get a really succinct and powerful teachings that can inspire me to move on a path to awaken my consciousness and to begin to see clearly and to become free. So the Diksha Guru is considered to be a really powerful thing, and a lot of Westerners say, well, you mean I have to do whatever they tell me? And yeah, the Hindu tradition would say yes. And if you don't want to do that, then don't look for a guru. In other words, if you don't want to let go of your own ego and open yourself up to the divinity through the vehicle of the teacher, then don't even try. I mean, don't pretend. Don't go to and say, well, I'm going to go to a guru, and if I agree with what she or he tells me, then that's fine. And if I don't agree, well, then I'm not going to do it. Well, then you're not really looking for a guru. You're looking for someone to a life coach. That's what we might have in the West. You can hire and fire. Not somebody who you have to take serious. Okay? It is considered within the Indian tradition that you take the teachings of the Guru serious. My teacher once said to me, he said, when you surrender to the Guru, you're not actually surrendering to the Guru, you're surrendering to God. And what you're saying, okay, divine, I can't hear you, and I can't understand you. I can't hear you within. I can't hear the teachings. The clarity is not there for me. So I'm going to pick someone who is clearly on that path, who clearly has that understanding, who you have inspired me and you have blessed me with meeting. And I'm going to pick this person. And whatever you want me to know, have this person tell me. And I'm surrendering to this person, but actually I'm surrendering to you. And so whatever I'm supposed to learn, have this person tell me, and that's what I'll do. And my teacher said, and so if you truly surrender to the divine, there's no way that your teacher can teach you wrong. Because that which is in control, is the divinity. It's not the individual. And so there is this part of lack of free will in some sense, in that whatever we are to be taught, we're going to be taught. It's up to us. And that, we may say, is the free will to do it or not. But then there's others who would say, well, we don't even have a free will there. But anyway, that's another story. Okay, so the idea that when I go to a teacher, I go to the teacher with the idea that I will do whatever the teacher tells me, because I have really made this contract with the divine that please tell me through the person who I've accepted as guru, the things that I need to know. And so my teacher would mention things like that, and at other times my teacher would say, once you can hear the divine within, and you can differentiate between the divine and the ego, then you don't need me anymore. And one might say, oh, well, that's easy, or one might realize it's not very easy. But to be able to know the difference between when the divine is talking to us or when our ego is talking to us, actually, it's pretty easy. It's the ego that's going to say, oh, you don't have to do that. You don't have to be nice to that person. You don't have to, you don't have to tell the truth in that situation. It would be easier if you just, they don't need to know. You know, all the things that make our lives a little bit easier, that's the ego talking to us. The divine, when the divine talks to us, it's be truthful, be compassionate, be nonviolent, be humble, be forgiving, be wise, serve others, be a righteous person. That's when we get those inspirations within, that's the divine. That's not the ego talking to us, that's the divine talking to us. But how do we learn to be able to hear those, allow those messages to come through? Because sometimes our ego won't even allow us to hear such messages. And so how can we open ourselves, awaken our consciousness so that we can hear those messages? Those are the teachings, those are the practices. And so that's really what sadhana is all about. Spiritual practice within the Hindu tradition is doing those things that open your heart and your mind to hear the truth, to hear goodness. And we call goodness the dharma. To hear that, I translate it as goodness, or righteousness. You can say the same thing. And so, when we are open to those kinds of things, then the world becomes different to us, and then we begin to see what we are supposed to do, and then we no longer are on a path of simple sensual appeasement or sensual satisfaction, but spiritual longing, the desire for growth, the desire for consciousness, the desire for righteousness. And that's what a teacher can do for us. But in order for us to do that, we have to let go of the ego. And sometimes the teachers, I know teachers who have been just compassionate and loving and on the surface, right? But any teacher who is not willing to hit the disciple over the head, metaphorically or maybe even physically sometimes, they're rare, because it's necessary. And sometimes we have to be hit over the head. Sometimes we have to be busted, because our ego is a hard nut to break, and you really need a nutcracker. And and so we have to allow that. And if we don't want to allow that, then don't look for a teacher. I just got back from 4 months in India a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about my guru brother, a younger guru brother. He became a disciple of my teacher maybe about 20 years after I took initiation, he's my younger brother. And he's the mahant of a monastery now. And so whenever I go to India, that's my home. And then we travel together. And we were talking about just the things that our teacher would say to us, and how easy it is to ignore the teachings, and how important it is not to ignore the teachings. And sometimes, oh, he didn't really mean that. Well, maybe actually he did. And so we would talk about, and we would laugh about how the things that the teacher would tell us, and how difficult it was sometimes for us to hear it, because we weren't ready to hear it. And then how later on we would look back and see how important and how prescient those teachings were, and yet we just weren't ready. We all do that. And so the willing teacher is also a teacher who has the patience and the compassion to stay with us and to continue to guide us. And sometimes that guiding is with a little bit of a whack on the back or on the head. And sometimes it's just with kindness. Well, that's all kindness too, but with an apparent kind of geniality, right? But that doesn't always work. In fact, for many of us, that's not the best guide for us. The best guide for us is just to have us be told the truth. If you're being stupid, then think about what you're doing. Think about the who you're hurting, what you're hurting. Think about what you're really doing. How much of that is simply your ego? And a lot of Westerners, when they're teachers and they look for a teacher, and their teacher tells them, well, I don't like this person. The person not being nice to me. Or do you want the person to be nice to you? Or do you want the person to teach you? Because that's often not the same thing. And so a willing teacher has to be a teacher willing to put up with our baloney, put up with our craziness, put up with our ego and our ignorance, and have the compassion to stay with us and guide us. Right? And so those of us who have teachers, we're very fortunate. There's, but I know many people have teachers and just don't listen to them. And I've been guilty of the same thing. When my teachers told me something I didn't want to hear, so I just kind of pretended he didn't say it. And sometimes he'd go, oh, you remember when I told you? Have you done that yet? Oh, yeah, forgot. So I think, I think about willing teacher, and when Renee talked about the willing teacher, and I thought really willing to have the patience to guide us, because you need a lot of patience, right? Because the ego is a really strong nut to crack, and you need a lot of patience in order to do it. And so
Ramdas, can I ask you about something that I've heard?
Sure.
I don't know that Gandhi necessarily considered himself a guru, and especially, this is very interesting, definition of a diksha, a guru or teacher who gives initiation. So I don't know whether he considered himself that or not. However, you spoke about the responsibility that someone in that role takes on. And I know that in Gandhi's case, if someone in who is living in one of his spiritual communities, in his ashrams, did a wrong act, he would do penance for that act himself.
Mhm.
So he would, for example, decide, oh, this person committed an act of violence, which in our ashram is something that we've all taken vows not to do.
Yeah.
And so now I am going to fast
Mhm.
because this person in my ashram has done an act of violence. And
Yeah.
can I wonder what all of us think about that. I'm sure you'll have an idea, and I wonder if some other people have ideas on that too.
I think when Gandhi did that, he was basically saying, when I have an ashram, and as you know, he had a variety of ashrams both in India and in South Africa, and a variety of experiments that I think that he was doing, trying to come up to create a communities. That's really what he was trying to do. And when he would accept somebody into the community and they would do something, he'd say, because I accepted them in the community, I have to take responsibility. It's kind of like the idea of the buck stops here. You know, it's like we have people today who are in positions of power, and when somebody does something wrong, they will, even when they do something wrong, they'll blame everybody else. They'll never take responsibility for themselves. Well, that idea that the buck stops here, that was very much Gandhi. I mean, if somebody does something who's with me, it's my responsibility. And so I should deal with it. I should do whatever I have to do to make compensation or repentance for that was done. Because if it wasn't for me and creating this situation, this person wouldn't have been here and wouldn't have done that. And I think that's the way Gandhi looked at it.
Is that similar to what a guru would do?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Many teachers end up becoming very sick. And it's common understanding that a lot of times their sickness is because of the karma that they've taken from people that are in their community, or their disciples that have done something, and they needed to just say, well, okay, I'm going to help this person deal with this because they don't have the power to do it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other thoughts? The questions people have about this idea of a willing teacher, what it takes to be willing.
Let me just add one thing to this is, unlike other kinds of teachers, the spiritual guru traditionally in India takes no compensation for what they do. And we can't all live that way. And we can't live, I mean, in India, you can live that way. In the West, that would be very difficult to do. But the idea that the teachings are for those who are ready for them, and they're given out of compassion. They're given out of a desire to bring peace to the world. And so many of the teachers who I have spent time with, they talk about that, the importance of it to us to bring peace to the world. And their teachings are for that purpose. In fact, as a monk, it was interesting. So when I go back to India these days, when I'm with my monastic brothers, I'm living as a monk once again. And we're going to various ashrams, and we're meeting various teachers. And because I'm writing a book about them, so I go to various teachers to interview them and that. And so I would, in the past, when I've done this, I've said, okay, so I tell them, I'm a member of the monastic order, but I took initiation in the monastic order in this particular time, and this particular teacher is my guru, etc. Now I'm living in the West, I'm a professor, and I'm writing a book about this stuff. And so then after interviewing them, I'd make a donation to them. Most of them wouldn't take it. They would say, no, what you're doing is good. And then sometimes they would turn around and give me a donation. because they're not there to be enriched. They don't see the need for monetary enrichment, especially for people who they see are taking the practice serious. For people who are not taking the practice serious, okay, you want to donate some money, go ahead. But for people who are taking the practice serious, they're not interested in getting a monetary compensation from people like that. They're just happy that there are people who are willing to take the practice serious. A very different approach.
Yeah. Maybe one. Go ahead, Diana.
I was just thinking that we all are teachers, and that finding a teacher in the Western world is not easy in many ways as it is in India, that have that dedication or that way of being. And I was thinking, when we take what you were saying was allow the consciousness to be awakened and let go of the ego, and then doing things with the heart and mind, for like the bringer of light into darkness. I think each of us in our daily lives, by how we interact with people, by how we live with truth and divine love and divine wisdom in this moment, how do we share that with the people, with just people in our lives, the grocery store person, and it's like, how do we bring that light with us? And even when you said the first teacher's mother, and what I wrote down, you said she had to be a willing teacher, patient and compassionate, to stay with us, and willing to, and I got willing to set limits and guide us. That is that process that, in my words, that we teach people how to treat us. And so it's like, how do we bring our love and light? And not that I'm a guru or any of those other things, but how do I live my life so that I can bring more light into the world? And how do I live my life to make my spiritual practice, or living from my core wisdom, to be how I live my life? So I was seeing all of us as teachers, some more willing than others, but to even those that aren't aware and are in their ego, they're teaching also. And it's like, how do we listen to those around us, and how do we share our love with other people? That's what was.
I think you bring up a very important point. Even those people who have no awakened consciousness as such, and are going out doing things that cause harm, they're teaching us also. My father, I left home at 15 because of the way he was. And it just got to the point where it wasn't a survivable situation anymore. I had to leave. But I learned so much from that. Had he not been the way he had been, I wouldn't have learned the things that I learned. And so we learn from everybody. Either we learn how to do things, we learn how not to do things, right? So we learn from everybody. And that idea is really important, is that we need to be able to learn from everything that happens. Everything that happens is a vehicle for us to gain wisdom. Everything that happens is a vehicle for us to be able to reflect on our responses and why our responses to each situation are the way they are, and how we can learn to respond in a way that brings light and love and compassion. And that's not going to happen if everything is easy.
Yeah.
If everything is easy, no, we're not going to learn anything. Life needs to be difficult. We're blessed with difficulties.
And I think the other side of that, we learn from everybody, but everyone learns from us also. If we're all one, the truth is everything we do informs other people about ways to live and how to live life. And if we think it's okay to lie and cheat and do all these things, we're teaching other people that may be okay.
That's right. That's
how
right.
Teach that realizing everything we do is informing other people, just like everything other people do to us informs us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What people do is so much more important than what they say, and what parents do is so much important than what they say. Children learn from the actions of the parents far more than they ever learn from the words of the parents. And so, yeah, when we say, "Oh yeah, I'm a very spiritual person," and why are you upsetting me?
Yeah.
Right. So it's really important for us to be able to understand that we have to at every moment we're talking to God.
Mhm.
And if we approach it that way, that every being out there is divinity. And so if we can do that, we can approach it. And sometimes that divinity is in the form of a not very nice being. And that doesn't mean that we should just let them do what they want. And sometimes it's our job to inform people you're not being the divine that you are. You are hiding the divinity that is you. And sometimes we have to help them to see that. And sometimes it takes a bop over the head. Right. But we have to do it with compassion. We have to do it understanding. I mean, I worked at the prison, and for those of you that heard me talk before, I probably mentioned, I worked at the prison for 17 years. And I worked with murderers and rapists and child abusers and all that. And every day I had to see this is God too. There's divinity in them too. It's just they sure have covered up a lot. And then we talked to them about what can you do to help uncover all this crap that you have allowed yourself to be covered with. And let's figure out ways that we can kind of unpack that stuff so the beauty that is you can come out. And for a lot of the prisoners, they couldn't accept that there was any beauty inside them at all.
I was intrigued by that statement you made earlier about when the student is ready, the teacher will be there, the guru will be there.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, like in our culture, we don't have the deep guru chela relationship that you're describing, but sometimes we have these serendipities of a relationship, with someone who's a stranger or something. It's almost like at that particular moment, someone is fulfilling the role of a teacher to us. And I was just wondering about that kind of having that awareness that, if we're in a state of readiness, we'll get some kind of teaching. It's kind of like everything kind of lines up and everything can, and a deeper awareness can happen, even though maybe that person isn't, quote, a guru. That person is fulfilling the role of a guru. The second part of that question is, I heard a story once about someone who went to India searching for a teacher, found a wise being, and that wise being told them to go back home and do their duty.
Mm-hmm.
So they were not ready, for the teacher. But can you say more about that idea of when the student is ready, the teacher will appear?
Sure. And I think I'll go back to what Diana said earlier, that we learn from everybody. So, and I think that was the first part of your comment, is that we can learn from absolutely everyone. And sometimes the teachings are true wisdom, right? Just really amazing wisdom. And for those of us for whom wisdom is something on our radar, that this is what we're looking for. And sometimes we'll hear something from somebody and go, wow, how beautiful. Just how amazing and how beautiful that is. And maybe the person who said it didn't even realize what they were saying, but they were directed to say it for us. And that's the way I like to look at it, is thank you, God, for having this person show me this or say this to me. And I think that's what I mean by when the disciple is ready. When we're ready, we'll hear God in everything. When we're ready, we will hear teachings from everybody. And I do believe the importance of having a guru that kind of gives us the parameters within which we function. But some people don't have that. And that's fine too. The main thing is that if we can open our hearts so that we can hear divinity from everyone, divinity will speak to us from everyone.
Following up on what Cliff just said, so my experience has been similar, not just one-off kind of things that, and I'm sure Cliff says the same thing, but there have been many times where I've heard or said things that had an impact on me or the other person that was profound. But in addition to that, I've had a number of wonderful mentors in my life that were definitely not in the tradition you spoke of the Diksha, where we were glued to each other for the rest of our lives. I may have studied with them or studied under them or just learned from being in their presence.
Sure.
And what I found each time, and this went on basically throughout their lives, most of them were older than me and have passed on, that they had serious, I don't like the flaws in their character. And there were people who wouldn't learn from them or study from them because of that. But what I got was the brilliance of their knowledge and just let go of the other stuff. I didn't do what you said, which is follow the teach. I mean, they weren't really telling me to do the wrong things, that there were their flaws. I just didn't do it.
There's another concept: take the best and leave the rest. Right.
Yeah.
So there are people who like, I think, like what Diana was saying, like what Cliff was saying, like what you're saying, that are going to teach us, and we need to be ready to learn from all of them. But then there are, from time to time, and that's not in the West, is not a very common thing in other traditions and other cultures. A lot of indigenous cultures, the role of the teacher is very profound. With that role, we don't give the emphasis to that in our culture today, where that guidance is always there, and it's very powerful. But for those of us who can open our hearts and open our minds, then, like what the three of you have said, is we interact with people who will teach us amazing things, and sometimes those people are not necessarily that nice, but that doesn't prevent goodness from coming through. That doesn't prevent wisdom from coming through, and it's beautiful. And so if we have a teacher, if we have a guru who has the ability and the willingness to be our lifelong guide, and that's a necessary part of our existence, then that's great. If that is not the case, then it is our duty to find that goodness within us, so that we can get all the teachings we need from everyday life, from all the people that we meet, from all the things that we read. Sometimes someone will send me, like you all, I get tons of emails every day, and I get emails from students, and I get emails from this person and friends and colleagues and on all sorts of stuff. And sometimes there'll just be one or two sentences in it that I just have to stop. And I go, yeah, that's beautiful. I just sit with that. Right? And I just sit with that sentence, or sit with those words, and say, that's perfect. It's beautiful. So, yeah, I think it's there. And Roger, obviously you've had many in your life that have done that for you, and I'm sure you've done that for many. And that's the beauty of it. And that's this idea that we are all one family. And when we understand that we need to be open to learn from each other, then beauty can happen. And that's what we all want. We just want beauty to happen. And so let's just make it happen, and let's let it happen. We don't even have to make it happen. We have to let it happen.
I think that one of the important things from the Indian tradition is to really have the appreciation for a teacher.
Yeah.
And when I hear about the responsibility level that a teacher, a spiritual teacher of the kind that you're talking about, takes on, that could be for a lifetime, could be for many lifetimes in the Hindu tradition. It does invoke in me a sense of gratitude for anyone who would take that on behalf of others. It just seems so magnanimous that one could, just la-di-da pursue one's own path. But
Yeah.
No, the teacher says, wait, there are all these other people who are trying to get up the mountain. I gotta lend a hand here, even if I, don't make it up or this quickly or whatever.
Yeah. So in the Buddhist tradition, we call that the Bodhisattva, right? And in our lineage, it's eternal bhakta, or an eternal devotee, and that we go through all the teachings that we need, and once we are ready to graduate, we graduate in the sense that we are no longer reborn to work out our own karma. Now we're reborn to help others. We come back to help. We come back to volunteer, to be in the world, living in the world. And you can come back as a teacher. We can come back as a baker. We can come back as a used car salesman, right? We can come, it doesn't matter. But we come back with the idea that we are going to help people to see divinity in everyday life and in themselves. And we know that there are people in the world that are not gurus as such, but who have wisdom and who share that wisdom. And maybe they didn't come back to be a specific Diksha guru for a person, but they came back to add to the enlightenment, add to the goodness of the world. And those people are just as important. There was Thich Nhat Hanh once, somebody asked him, about bodhisattvas, and how many bodhisattvas are there? If all these people have kind of gotten ready for enlightenment and then have been reborn to help others, he said, as many as there are stars in the sky.
This is kind of a question, a personal question in a certain sense. In terms of the classic relationship of a guru and a chela in India, it seems that when people go to a guru and the guru accepts them, what happens with them as disciples is a kind of traveling in consciousness, an expansion or a deepening of wisdom. So, and they're maybe not even aware of this journey that they're on, but they're on this journey with other disciples. And I was wondering if you could say something about the relationship of the disciples to one another as they're traveling this journey, and also if, say, at some point one of these students breaks away from the teacher, how does that alter the relationship between two that were co-disciples and now they're no longer one disciple and a second disciple, but someone who's broken from the teacher? What kind of, have you ever had that kind of experience?
Oh yeah, we look at it as family structure. My guru is my parent, right? So if my guru is a female, it would be my mother. My guru is a male, is my father. My guru's guru is my grandparent, right? My guru's other disciples are my brothers and my sisters. That's the family unit. And it's basically 3 generations. And those are the ones that, and then sometimes the 4th generation. So if I have disciples and my guru brother or guru sister has disciples, they're cousins. And that's the way, and so there are nephews or nieces. That's the way you literally relate to them. So my guru brother who has the ashram, his disciples refer to me as Chacha Guru. In other words, Uncle Guru. And I refer to his disciples as Bhatija Chela, my nephew Chela, right? Because he's the disciple of my brother. And that family relationship is powerful. It's really powerful. So when I show up at an ashram, and I've shown up at ashrams where my group brothers are the head of the ashram, and he has disciples there that have never met me. And I show up and tells them, this is my older guru brother, and immediately they're deeply respectful and oh, I want to take a picture of you, and so I can tell my friends about my Chacha Guru, my Uncle Guru, who I just met, these kinds of things. And the relationship is genuine. It's amazing. It's really genuine. But there was one who took the dark path, right? And he became a disciple. And I remember because I helped I didn't initiate him, but after the initiation, I gave him some of his first teachings. This is in the 1970s. And then he decided he wanted to go to Nepal to learn some Tantra. And my teacher warned him, like, you have to really watch that. He says, yeah. And he did. And he ended up doing some pretty intense things. And my teacher said, when he heard about one particular thing that he had done, he called for him. And when he came, he says, I never want to see you again. Leave. You're no longer a part of the family. And he kicked him out. I didn't see him for 20 years. But I found out that my other guru brothers would see him from time to time. They didn't disown him, but they would say to him, you really need to work it out with Guruji. You really need to get your act together, because you know that what you've done is not going to benefit you or benefit anyone. And if you really want to advance, you can't do it out of the graces of your Diksha Guru. And after about 20 years, that's why I saw him after 20 years, because he came back to Guruji and he asked for forgiveness. And Guruji accepted him tentatively. You need to show me that the things that you've done, you are going to stop doing those things and that you have taken another path. He understood all along, Guruji understood all along, that other of his disciples were seeing this person. But he also understood that in seeing them, that they were warning him. They weren't disowning him, but they were saying, you're our brother, but you're our brother who's gone astray, and we want to help you. What can we do to help you get back into Guru's graces? So it was really interesting, and he ended up suffering a great deal because of what he had done. He ended up dying relatively early because of what he had done. And when he died, all of our family were there to support his ashram, to support his disciples, because he was still a family member, even though it really screwed up, right? So it's interesting. The family network in lineage is very important. And what I've seen recently, in the last 4 months when I was in India, is that lineages are now broadening, in the sense that, so I'm a member of the Ramananda order, and I was traveling with my teacher, and we would end up going to a particular town, and we would get there late in the evening, and we thought that there was this Ramananda temple there, but it turned out that the Ramananda temple was not there, or for some reason we couldn't stay there. We'd say, is there another sadhu temple or sadhu monastery? Oh yeah, over there. And we would just go, and we would come in, and they would look at us, and they'd say, and the first thing they do is ask you, are you hungry? And do you want to spend the night? Yeah, we kind of liked it. Okay, fine. So we stayed at Goraknath temples. We stayed at Udasi temples. We stayed at Shaivite temples. It didn't matter. What matters is that we're all on the same path, which is we're looking for divinity, and we've committed our lives to that. That's all they need to know. And then you're part of a broader family. And it was great. It's wonderful to meet these people who don't see the differences as much as they see the unities. I don't know if that answered your question.
How far along are you on your book?
Oh man, the problem is there's just too much information. Every time I go, oh man, that's another 2 chapters I have to write. Right. So, but it's great doing it. Just being with these, just kind of hanging out with these teachers and talking to them, and they're letting me ask them absolutely anything. And I get pretty personal, So what do you do about this? And have you had disciples that have done? Oh yeah, I've had several of those. And what are you doing in this situation? And how do you deal with the government when they are trying to do this? And they're just really open about the ways that we all need to work together. Those of us for whom truth is important, all should understand that we are a part of a particular segment of the universal family. And it's a segment of people for whom spiritual growth is significant.
Do you think we all belong to it, Ramdas?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that, right? We wouldn't be here today.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the beauty of one of the many beauties of what you and Cliff are doing with the Still and Moving Center and with this GEMS is just bringing us together to remind us what a beautiful family we have of amazing people who in their own way are doing wonderful things.
Yeah, every person here.
Yeah.
Ramdas, this was wonderful. It really opened up some doors about what it means to be a teacher and our willingness to do that. And it gives us, I don't know a lot about the Indian tradition, so it opened up. I'm in the Buddhist tradition, so we have different ways of being, but it's all one. And that we all are teachers and that we all can learn from everything and see the divinity and kindness and goodness and everything. And it's really a calling for all of us to do that. So thank you. It was a wonderful.
It's Guru Guru Chela Chini, which means the guru is like brown sugar. It's like they boil down the sugarcane juice. It's everything is there, but it's in a rough form. The chela is like chini, that means refined sugar. And the idea that each disciple is a refinement of the teachings of the guru. So each disciple is expected to take all the teachings and put them into present day, put them into our own lives, and refine them in a way that we can meet people where they are at. People that they're not where our teacher is at. Our teacher was learned when he or she was in a particular place. We are now in a new place. And so we have to refine those teachings to make them applicable to the people present day to help them.
Very inspiring. Thank you so much. And thank you all for attending. It's lovely to have each of you here. Aloha.
Bye.